In July 1999, on a dry and sweltering summer night in the Nevada desert, a young couple pulled over at a roadside gas station. They were on a cross-state drive from Colorado to California, only a few hours away from their destination. The car was recorded on the station's security camera at 9:14 in the evening. The gas receipt showed only half of the transaction. A call from the payphone was abruptly cut off, and then both of them, along with the modest dream packed neatly inside their old hatchback, vanished completely off the map of America. There were no signs of struggle, no witnesses, no final message. Their car was found the next morning, still parked neatly beside the gas pump, locked, untampered, nothing missing. The disappearance quickly caught national media attention, but just as swiftly faded into silence. Years passed, and the meager clues were gradually forgotten until one day, 25 years later, when an old surveillance tape was restored from the county police archive. In the blurred figures of that desert night, a third person emerged, someone no one had ever mentioned. When people recalled the disappearance at the Wellers Point gas station, most locals remembered only one thing: the car remained, but the people did not. And for more than 2 decades, those unanswered questions lingered quietly across the land of dust and scorching winds, as if the place itself had swallowed every trace. The last confirmed detail occurred at 9:14 in the evening. That was the moment the gas station's receipt printed only halfway, listing the amount of fuel but without a signature confirming the transaction. The station operator, Clive Norwood, stated that there had been a sudden power outage causing the printer and the front counter lights to temporarily go dark. After that, he vaguely remembered seeing Eileen standing near the wash basin while Marquez was on the phone in the booth out back. The problem was, no one besides Clive could verify what happened next. A truck driver, the only other witness who happened to stop by at 9:45, reported seeing a dark blue hatchback parked alone, its doors shut with no one inside. He assumed the driver had gone to the restroom or stepped inside to rest, so he paid no attention. When his truck pulled away about 15 minutes later, the car still had not moved. That night, the gas station closed at 10:30. Clive said he checked around the area but didn't notice anything unusual. The next morning, Marquez and Eileen's car was still in the same spot as if it had never been touched. The doors were locked from the inside. Eileen's wallet was intact on the passenger seat. In the trunk, everything remained untouched, including a mini DV camcorder, a toiletry bag, and their travel map neatly folded. There were no signs of struggle, no blood, no drag marks, not a single clue indicating they had left the car in panic. What was strange was that the mini DV camcorder still held a tape inside, recording a 12-minute clip shot that very afternoon. In the video, Marquez was laughing while driving through low hills, and Eileen was tapping a rhythmic tune on the window glass. There was no sign of unease. Everything felt natural, filled with anticipation for their upcoming destination. And then night fell. Wellers Point gas station became the place they stopped, and vanished without a trace. The case left the Ely County Police baffled. There was no clear reason to declare a forced disappearance, no evidence of a criminal act. But there was also no plausible explanation for why both individuals would leave their vehicle in the middle of the desert at night without taking a wallet, a phone, or any identification. Public opinion quickly divided. Some believed they had deliberately escaped their old life. Others were convinced they had fallen victim to an unknown force in the region. But the more people speculated, the less truth remained. And that gas station, with its tilted sign, aging phone booth, and an unexamined blind spot, gradually became the center of one of the most mysterious disappearances of the final decade of the 20th century. The final recorded signal from the Duval couple came at 9:18 in the evening, a phone call lasting less than 12 seconds placed from the public phone booth behind the gas station. The call was made to the landline of Eileen's mother in the city of Pueblo, Colorado. She did not answer in time. The voicemail captured only the sound of wind howling interspersed with faint metallic clinks. No voice, no words. The call ended abruptly, as if someone had let go before saying a single thing. That detail, minor yet unsettling enough to raise suspicion within the family, was the first to be dismissed in the initial investigation. The police at the time deemed it an accidental call or a signal error caused by the remote location. But not long after, another detail emerged that made everything even harder to explain. In the fine red dust that blanketed the area around the phone booth, the forensics team discovered 3 sets of footprints. 2 were identified as belonging to Marquez and Eileen. But the third, deeper set at a different angle and moving toward the booth rather than away could not be traced. It did not belong to the station staff, nor did it match anyone known to have been present during the investigation window. Additionally, on the side of the phone booth, there was a circular patch of missing paint, as if something had once been hung or mounted there for a long time, then removed. A faint white outline lingered under the weary glow of the flickering fluorescent light. The security camera mounted on the awning, which might have offered the only objective evidence, was, according to Clive Norwood, never functional. He claimed it was just an old shell hung there to scare off petty thieves. No one verified the statement. And the incomplete receipt, the last printed line read, "Diesel, 6.2 gal, $8.44, then nothing more." The strange part was, Marquez didn't drive a diesel. Their car ran on regular gas, a data entry error, a staff mistake. Or had they pumped the wrong fuel? Police ruled it as a simple clerical error. But for the family, it became one of the most troubling inconsistencies because Marquez had always been meticulous about cars. There was no way he would have made that mistake. And as if to make things even more tangled, in the 3-page itinerary found in Marquez's leather-bound notebook, there was a single line crossed out in the bottom right corner of the last page, 21-10. "Do not go outside if you see lights by the fence." No one knew when that note was written, and no one could explain why it appeared amid the lists of routes, fuel stops, and emergency contacts. But from that moment on, the disappearance of Marquez and Aline was no longer just a case of vanishing into the night. It began to carry the weight of something else, something that hinted that someone had been waiting for them all along. On the morning of July 18, 1999, when the dark blue hatchback remained idle beside the gas pump with no one returning for it, Clive Norwood, the station operator, finally called the Ely County Police. He said that someone might have left the car behind, but emphasized that he didn't see anything concerning. Local police arrived at 9:12 in the morning. In their initial report, they described the area as showing no signs of intrusion or tampering. The car doors were locked. The handbag was untouched. A folded map lay partially open on the dashboard. The keys were not in the car, but were also nowhere to be found outside. The tires showed no signs of skidding or unusual movement. The handbrake was still engaged. Upon contacting the vehicle registry, they quickly confirmed the owner as Marquez Duval. A call was made to Aline's family, and within a few hours the situation was elevated from abandoned vehicle to a likely disappearance. That afternoon, the initial search team, 12 members and 3 tracking dogs, began sweeping a 2-mile radius around the gas station. However, the arid terrain, strong winds, and soaring temperatures quickly hampered their efforts. Any trace left in the sand was erased within hours under the desert sun. There were no discarded clothes, no blood, no scattered belongings. The dogs could not establish a clear direction of movement. Each scent trail broke off as if someone had walked away, then returned, then vanished. Meanwhile, the couple's home in Denver was thoroughly inspected. There were no signs of planning for a disappearance. Money remained in their bank accounts. Bills were still being paid on schedule. Aline had even scheduled a gynecological checkup for the following week, something that convinced her family she had no intention of leaving for long. The media picked up the story on the 3rd day. News of a young couple vanishing in the desert spread rapidly, sparking public curiosity across the western United States. Those who had passed through the area that night were urged to come forward. Over 40 calls were received, but no one could say with certainty what they had seen. The location was too remote, the gas station too nondescript, and the couple, no one remembered them well enough to recall a face. A volunteer search group, including family members, was formed, expanding the search to underground springs, rock gullies, and old utility tunnels in the region. At one point, they even enlisted early model drones from a mining survey company to scan the terrain. But the results remained the same: nothing. On the 10th day, police were forced to halt direct search operations and reclassify the case as an open investigation. And that was when the lead investigator, Lieutenant Daryl Munes, wrote a chilling line in his internal report. "We have no victims, no crime scene, no perpetrator. We only have a void." 1 week after the disappearance was made, public attention began to fixate on the only man known to be present at the scene during the presumed final moments: Clive Norwood, the proprietor of Wellers Point gas station. At the time, Clive was 47 years old, living alone in a small house behind the station. No wife, no children, no nearby neighbors. His gas station operated 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, but few people ever stopped by at night. On record, he had a minor criminal offense from the 1980s related to a bar fight which had since been expunged. To some investigators, this seemed insignificant, but to the press it was the perfect hook to drag the entire story into darker territory. Local newspapers ran headlines, "Shadowed Corners Behind a Desert Station." A televised true crime show dramatized a speculative scenario in which Clive confronted the couple over a fuel receipt dispute, forced them out of the car, and hid their bodies in some yet undiscovered location. Pressure mounted. A full-scale search of the station was carried out on July 25th. Police scoured every corner: underground tanks, the utility basement, the dirt lot behind the old oil storage shed. They used metal detectors, thermal imaging, even ground-penetrating radar. But they found nothing. Inside Clive's house, they found a collection of old science fiction books, a detailed sales log notebook, and a VHS tape labeled "Camera Test." When the tape was played, it contained only test footage from a worn-out camera, unrelated to the night of the disappearance. But one strange detail stood out in several frames. The front yard light flickered erratically, out of sync with the electrical grid. And at the 9th minute of the footage, the camera captured a very faint image, what appeared to be a human figure slipping past the edge of the frame, visible for only a single frame. The forensic technician suggested it might have been a recording glitch, but the victims' families were not so sure. Another detail added to the growing suspicion around Clive: the mini DV camcorder found intact in Marquez's car was missing a tape. Based on the numbering and labeling on the cassette box, police believed there had been another tape filmed on July 17th that had never been recovered. Clive denied all involvement. He insisted he had not touched the car, not moved any belongings, and knew nothing about any missing tape. The police had no evidence, no DNA, no physical trace. But the media didn't need much. In the public eye, Clive had already become the prime suspect. Worse yet, rumors began to spread that Clive had secret relationships with travelers passing through and that he may have targeted Eileen. Police investigated the public phone line records, Clive's financial transactions, even his VHS rental history, but found nothing unusual. In the end, unable to charge him or make an arrest, the police were forced to remove Clive from the list of primary suspects. But the public was not so quick to forget. Clive began shutting the station early. He no longer served customers after 9 at night. Once a man no one noticed, he became a symbol of an unanswered mystery, a station keeper in the desert where 2 people vanished forever on a July night. And in that silence, one detail remained unspoken. The security camera on the awning, the one Clive always claimed never worked, had actually been sent out for repair a week before the disappearance. But no one ever learned where it was sent. And no one asked Clive about it, until 25 years later. In the archived police records of Ely County, the disappearance of Marquez and Eileen was classified as open but inactive. This meant the case remained unresolved, yet no longer received active attention. Physical evidence had been sealed and stored away in a small concrete warehouse adjacent to the old checkpoint station, and it was there 24 years later that a nearly forgotten detail teetered on the edge of vanishing forever. In March of 2023, the County Police Department launched a review and digitization of old files. A 26-year-old archival engineering student named Lenny Groves, serving as an intern, was assigned to examine unprocessed video equipment from before the year 2000. Amid dusty, rodent-chewed cardboard boxes, Lenny came across a small plastic-wrapped container with a hastily scribbled label, "Cam Weller, delayed handling, do not file." Inside was a rectangular recording unit, the type used for early analog surveillance systems, heavy with AV signal output ports. Another sticker on the underside bore a date sent July 19, 1999. Recipient Visual Tech Unit 3, note signal instability. Lenny cross-checked the transfer records but found no evidence that the unit had ever been opened, processed, or returned to the gas station. For 24 years, it had sat untouched in a box never registered in the official evidence system. A forgotten object. And so he plugged it in. The device booted slowly, its lights flickering erratically, but eventually it produced an image on the auxiliary screen. The video was low-quality, blurry, full of interference and erratic frame jumps, but unmistakably it was footage from the night of July 17, 1999. The recording wasn't long. The opening showed the headlights of Marquez's car pulling up to the pump, the couple stepping out. Eileen walked into the convenience shop. Marquez stood beside the car, jotting something in his notebook. Then he moved toward the phone booth and back. By the 6th minute, the footage began to tremble, then suddenly froze. For roughly 20 seconds, the screen remained still. And then when the image returned, a figure stood at the far left edge of the frame between the shadows and the fence behind the station. The person did not approach, did not move, simply stood there. A tall, lean figure wearing a baseball cap and a long coat seen only briefly under the flickering light. Lenny carefully copied the entire video onto a hard drive and reported it to his superiors. The case was officially reopened in April of 2024 for the first time in nearly a quarter century. No one had ever asked Clive Norwood about the recording unit. No one had ever traced where it was sent from or by whom. And more importantly, no one had ever questioned why, in the original inventory, this device had never been listed. That overlooked detail, a seemingly harmless object sealed and forgotten, had now become the focal point. And it raised the most critical question of all: who was the person standing just outside the frame, unseen and unnamed, for 25 years? Immediately after the footage was restored, a special investigative task force was reassembled, this time with participation from the regional FBI. For the first time in 25 years, a visual clue, though blurry and faceless, was acknowledged as potentially altering the entire nature of the case. The frame captured a figure appearing at the far left edge of the gas station's camera, standing near the wooden fence that separated the station from the barren land behind. What stood out was this: that position was entirely outside the line of sight from the counter, the car, and the phone booth. Without the camera, no one would have known anyone had ever stood there. Image analysis performed by the FBI using specialized restoration software revealed that the figure was not naturally blurred by poor lighting, but deliberately obscured by signal interference from a power source. They speculated the person might have accidentally disrupted the signal with some device or deliberately approached the station under cover of darkness with calculated preparation. In May of 2024, a full review of transaction data at the gas station was conducted using AI technology for the first time to cross-reference legacy retail logs. There, a single anomaly surfaced: a diesel purchase, 6.2 gallons, logged at the exact moment Marquez's receipt cut off. But the transaction was attributed to a non-existent customer. The name entered in the system was simply JD. EXT, no license plate, no image, no signature. And notably, it was the only transaction in 30 days not recorded in Clive Norwood's handwritten sales log. When police attempted to reach Clive for further questioning, they received a shocking report: he had died 3 weeks earlier, having fallen down the stairs at his home, ruled as an accident. Time of death: the very night after the media announced the 1999 disappearance would be reopened. The person who discovered his body was a postal worker delivering a package. In Clive's hand was a VHS tape, unlabeled and unmatched to any tapes previously cataloged in the case records. When the tape was played, it was entirely blank. No signal. But on the back of the tape's case, written in blue ink, was a single line: "He came back, but this time said nothing." The task force began combing through all transaction data from previous years and uncovered this: the name JD. EXT had appeared twice before, once in 1997 and again in 2001 at 2 different gas stations over 100 miles from Weller's Point. Both stations had been connected to unresolved minor incidents: one an unsolved vehicle theft, the other the disappearance of a transient woman. From a detail once overlooked, a misfiled surveillance recorder, the police now faced the possibility of a suspect who may have operated in secrecy for years. And the name JD was likely not a person at all, but an internal tag used to label someone who moved unseen within the analog retail systems of a pre-digital age. The first twist was now confirmed. That night there had been a third person, and that person, though unseen, had appeared before and after. As investigators began digging deeper into Marquez Duval's background, an unexpected piece of the puzzle surfaced, one that had previously been dismissed due to its lack of direct connection to the disappearance. In 1996, 3 years before he vanished, Marquez had been part of a student environmental group at the University of New Mexico. The group was strongly opposed to a lithium mining project in the Bonneville Desert, a region near the Utah border, accusing the operation of contaminating groundwater and illegally encroaching on indigenous land. The group was small but fiercely committed. During a 2-week protest, they set up tents to block transport trucks, significantly delaying the mining company's operations. Several members were arrested, including Marquez, but he was released after 48 hours with only a warning. What stood out was this: among the detained students, one name appeared alongside Marquez Jeremiah D. Everett. The official arrest record abbreviated his name as JDE. This record had never been mentioned in the original investigation, as there had been no reason at the time to examine the social history of the victim. Following the incident in 1996, Jeremiah Everett withdrew from public activism. His tax and residency records vanished after 1998. The last trace of his name appeared on an application for a fuel transport license in Nevada filed in early 1999. Investigators immediately opened a missing persons inquiry, but Jeremiah had never been formally declared missing, and no relatives or legal assets had ever been registered under his name. It was as if he had vanished from the system entirely. Then another small detail was unearthed from the remaining mini-DV footage shot by Marquez. In the 12-minute video filmed the day they passed through the mountains before reaching the gas station at the 482nd second, as Aline quietly sang by the window. Marquez panned the camera to the side. For just a fleeting moment before the image jolted, a white pickup truck was visible parked on the roadside, its hazard lights flashing. A man stood beside it, facing away, wearing a long coat and a hooded cap. Image analysis placed that location roughly 50 miles from Weller's Point, meaning the vehicle was either ahead of them or lying in wait. Behavioral analysts suggested that if the man seen was Jeremiah, his presence was unlikely to be coincidental. It was plausible he knew Marquez's route and had planned to intercept. But intercept? For what purpose? A new theory emerged that the disappearance may have stemmed from an old conflict or even from Marquez's unwilling involvement in something he had once walked away from. It could have been a warning, an invitation, or in a darker scenario, a deliberate erasure. Aline, who had no ties to the activist group, was simply the one standing beside him at the wrong time. The second twist began to take shape. The figure in the shadows that night may not have been a stranger, but someone who had once walked beside Marquez, and who returned to reclaim something that had been lost. As the file on Jeremiah D. Everett was reopened, the task force began tracing every record that marked his presence. Protests, driver's license applications, temporary employment. One of the last known addresses linked to him was an abandoned warehouse in Carson Ridge, Nevada, once used to store mechanical equipment for mobile construction crews. On June 14, 2024, a team of investigators accompanied by forensic specialists accessed the warehouse. It had been sealed off since 2006 for safety violations but had never been examined as a potential crime scene. Amid the rubble, they discovered a rusted steel cabinet locked. Inside was a gray-sealed plastic box. In it, alongside a few corroded power tools, were a moldy VHS tape with a scratched-off label and a faded canvas pouch embroidered with the name E. Duval. The tape was sent to a restoration lab. After 3 days of treatment, the images began to emerge, a 14-minute soundless video shot from a fixed angle. The footage showed the dim interior of what appeared to be a vehicle lit only by the faint glow of a dashboard. Two figures appeared at the edge of the frame, blurry, only shoulders visible. But at the 6th-minute, light from outside streamed in briefly, illuminating Aline's face in the passenger seat, her eyes wide open, unmoving. She said nothing. She didn't struggle. She didn't cry. At the 9th minute, the rear car door opened. A gloved hand, dark firm, pulled Aline out of frame. The image shook and cut off. No audio, no confirmation of the person behind the camera. But when the forensic team examined the low-frequency audio spectrum, they detected an interference signal identical to the one found in the Weller's Point surveillance footage. And then an unexpected event turned everything upside down. On June 19th, less than a week after the discovery at Carson Ridge, the Ely County Sheriff's Office was broken into. The intruder stole no electronics or valuables, only breached the evidence storage room. A night shift employee reported seeing a tall, thin figure in a long coat and hood walking down the corridor before vanishing through the emergency exit. Surveillance cameras were disabled by an unknown interference signal for exactly 3 minutes, matching the frequency found in the old tapes. Upon inspection, the original VHS tape recovered from the Weller's Point camera was missing. But that was not the final shock. On June 25th, Clive Norwood was buried in the town cemetery according to the sole request he had left. No one attended the burial. But the next day, when cemetery staff returned, they found his gravestone overturned. And beneath it, the body was gone. The entire site was sealed off. There were no signs of manual excavation. Only a long, sunken trail extended from the grave to the northern wall where the grass had been scorched. The third twist could no longer be ignored. Someone was erasing the evidence, not just to cover up an old crime, but to prevent the case from advancing any further. And the man once considered a suspect was now unequivocally a victim. With fragmented yet haunting pieces of evidence slowly connecting, the investigative task force began to construct a scenario not grounded in confession or eyewitnesses, but in a tightly woven chain of events, material clues, and long-forgotten traces. The story began with a grounded assumption that Marquez Duval had been watched before July 17, 1999. The observer, possibly Jeremiah D. Everett or someone using his identity, had once shared a connection with Marquez through their involvement in an environmental activist group in 1996. There had been deep discord between them, potentially linked to Marquez's withdrawal or a disclosure that fractured the group's cohesion. Jeremiah, or JD, after vanishing from public records, appeared to have continued existing through a network of hidden identities operating like a ghost along remote service stations. His sparse appearances in transaction logs, marked only by shorthand or obscure notations, were the only trail mapping his path. And on the night of July 17th, at Weller's Point, he was ready. From the recovered footage, investigators determined the figure beyond the fence appeared for 18 seconds before Marquez stepped into the phone booth, meaning the timing had been calculated to isolate the couple. With a line inside the convenience shop and Marquez at the rear of the station, this momentary separation created the perfect window for action. A strong hypothesis emerged. Marquez was subdued at the phone booth, quickly, silently. Meanwhile, Eileen, returning to find him missing, likely began searching. That was when the perpetrator returned for the second time. The E. Duval canvas pouch found at Carson Ridge, 170 miles from the scene, anchored the theory further. There were no signs of violence in the car, suggesting they had been manipulated psychologically or sedated. The neatly arranged belongings implied they had left willingly, misdirecting initial investigation efforts. But the true objective of the perpetrator was not mere revenge. Evidence showed that he had duplicated or collected data from Marquez and Eileen's recording devices. At Carson Ridge, outdated electronics, including the blank tape and signal loop readers, had been connected in a feedback configuration. This was a technique rarely known outside of industrial surveillance circles. The investigative team issued a preliminary conclusion. The disappearance was not meant to destroy, but to possess, to control, possibly even to test. The break-in at the sheriff's office, the precise theft of the original tape, could only have been done by someone intimately familiar with the system's architecture. The interference frequency matched that of military-grade equipment from the 1990s once used in electronic warfare. This led to the final possibility: Jeremiah Everett, or the person behind his name, may have once been part of a movement opposing surveillance technology and later used that very same technology to disappear. Clive Norwood's accidental death, the removal of his body, and the eerie message, "He came back but this time said nothing," all pointed to a pattern, a figure, erasing, people, traces, even memory. And the most chilling element that crystallized the theory: on the white VHS tape, under ultraviolet light, a glowing line appeared in fluorescent ink. The story is just a loop, and I am only performing it again once more. 25 years after the disappearance, no one from the Duval family remained to directly oversee the case. Marquez's parents had both passed away. Eileen's mother, living in a nursing home in Colorado, suffered from memory loss, able to recall only fragments. Eileen loved the ukulele and liked to laugh at sunset. Though the case had been reopened, it was once again reaching a dead end. The task force could not locate any trace of Jeremiah if he were still alive. No medical records, no financial activity, no matching photographs. As if the name itself was no more than a phantom memory or a shell long since erased. In the final report submitted to the FBI, the lead investigator wrote, "We touch the past as if we touch fog. The more we grasp, the more it slips away." But in that very ambiguity, a small detail nearly overlooked resurfaced. In early August of 2024, while reviewing copies of the VHS footage for archival purposes, a technician noticed that at the 74th second of the tape, when the light inside the car flickered, a small piece of mirror in the rear-view corner briefly reflected the face of someone in the back seat. The image was enlarged and enhanced, not fully clear but just enough to reveal a long scar running from the ear down the chin. The scar matched old medical records belonging to Clive Norwood, the gas station owner. The final question, deeper than any theory, was now impossible to ignore. If Clive was in that vehicle at Carson Ridge, then who had been buried? Who had died? And more importantly, if he had left Weller's Point that night, then why? Was Marquez and Aline's car still perfectly parked at the pump the next morning? The final twist, subtle yet profound. The figure by the fence that night may not have been one person. It may have been two. It may have been themselves, or someone neither we nor the victims ever truly saw. The last line in Marquez's notebook, "Do not go outside if you see lights by the fence," was no longer a warning. It was a memory from the time before. In October of 2024, the disappearance of Marquez and Aline Duval was officially closed in the federal record with a final conclusion: victims missing involuntarily, presumed deceased, suspect unidentified. The press conference announcing the investigation's results lasted just over 7 minutes. No one attended aside from the media. No family members were present. Shortly after, the Ely County Police sealed off Weller's Point gas station, abandoned since 2012 in preparation for demolition as part of a regional redevelopment plan. The rusted pumps were cut down, the phone booth was pulled over, and the tilted sign was moved to the town's heritage archive as a strange relic of a forgotten time. Before the site was fully cleared, a work crew accidentally uncovered a patch of old concrete beneath a rubber mat in the electrical storage room. The slab did not align with the original building plans, offset by over half a meter from the wall. When drilled open, it revealed a small square cavity inside a hastily crumpled yellowed paper manuscript with torn edges. The title read, "Stop, Number 17, Unfinished Short Story." Author M.D. Experts confirmed the handwriting belonged to Marquez Duval. In the story, the protagonist drives across a desert and stops at a strange gas station where he meets a mysterious man who already knows his entire journey. The man demands he return a memory once abandoned or risk becoming trapped in a desert loop. The final line unfinished read, "And if you step out of the car, you will never..." The sentence ended there. And then, as if to place a final period on the entire sequence of memories, Weller's Point gas station was completely demolished on October 31st. The land where two people vanished is now just an empty space, just as Lieutenant Darrell Munes once wrote in his report back in 1999. No grave, no ending, no one left to mourn. Only a faint recollection like a whisper of lights beyond the fence. Thank you for staying with us until the very end. If you found this story meaningful, please share your thoughts in the comments and subscribe to the channel to support our mission in retelling forgotten truths.